Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully self-enlightened One. My utmost respect to the perfectly enlightened Samma Sambuddha, the noble doctrine of the Buddha, and the noble Mahasangha, the disciples of the Buddha. Hello, dear Dhamma friends. Welcome to week 18 of our guest lecture series. Under this weekly guest lecture series, we will cover up current and modern topics related to Buddhism to help benefit our community around the world. I certainly believe this effort by Dhamma USA is going to help the community to apply Buddhist teachings in a more practical level. Please make sure to mark your calendar every Thursday at 6 p.m. PST for great benefit from our guest lecture series. Kindly check with Dhamma USA YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Facebook groups for more updates. For today's topic, how has Buddhism blessed Ladakh, India? We have invited another distinguished person to this special guest lecture series. Our guest speaker today, who has kindly accepted our invitation, is a research scholar from Ladakh. He is the founder of Himalayan Cultural Heritage Foundation and the president of International Association for Ladakh of International Association for Ladakh Studies. Some of his academic accomplishments are being the editor of Heritage Himalaya, a biannual publication devoted to the Himalayan region's cultural heritage. And he was the most recently appointed the Ladakh Cultural Forum's president. For more details of his career experience, you can check out dhammausa.org. So let's please welcome Dr. Sonam Wangchok. Good evening to you, Doctor. How do you do?
And good morning to all those who have just woken up.
Okay,
I'm very sorry because my camera is somehow not working. So, but you can hear me.
Okay, yeah, no problem. So today's lecture by Dr. Sonam Wangchok will be live, and unfortunately there are some technological issues, so you'll be hearing his voice. So Dhamma friends, let us start today's session, and please kindly post your questions in the comment section of the Dhamma USA YouTube channel or Facebook page so that our guest lecturer can answer them at the end of the talk. Without further ado, let me invite Dr. Sonam Wangchok to start his presentation on how has Buddhism blessed Ladakh, India.
So, are you sharing my presentation from there? PPT?
I don't. Okay, the PPT is uploading.
Okay.
Okay, so we're just waiting on the presentation.
Right.
So, doctor, how has your day been going? Where are you located right now, actually?
Actually, right now I'm in Himachal Pradesh, another part of the Himalaya. So actually, it's snowing very heavily here right now,
Oh, wow.
and I don't know, maybe it's yeah. So that's why sometimes we have problem with the networks and all. So that may be a reason. I don't know that my camera is not. I'm not able to connect my camera.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, no worries. Yeah. I mean, I hope you're warm over there. The snow can be really.
Yeah, it's really snowing very heavily. It just started this
Wow.
morning, and it's
Yeah,
a bit cold
I'm
also here.
located. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm located in New Jersey, um,
Hmm.
in the U.S., and we haven't
Right.
gotten snow yet, and it's like January, so it's
Okay.
really
We have
strange.
been waiting very eagerly, like because in the Himalayas, snow is almost the life of the people here in Himalayas. If you don't have snow in winter, then like there are so many difficulties in summertime. So we are all depending on the glacier water here. Almost all the villages are fetched by glacier water. So we need a lot of snow in the winter actually for everything, agriculture and for every purpose.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's why we are very happy when there is snow in the winter.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty strange when we don't get it here during this season.
yeah, right. It's there.
Okay. So we have the presentation uploaded for today's talk. Okay, Dr. Sonam,
Okay,
you
shall I
can
start?
take the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Once again, good morning and also good evening. So it's around 7:44 here in India. So first of all, I would like to thank Dhamma USA for inviting me to talk on a topic on Ladakh. So I think that many of you have been to Ladakh and you know where is Ladakh. But for those who have never been to Ladakh, so I would like to explain a little bit about Ladakh, where it is situated and all. So can if you can just go to the next slide. Yes, so this is India, and Ladakh was a part of Jammu and Kashmir before 2019. And in 2019, the government of India has divided or separated Jammu and Kashmir from Ladakh. So now, just you can see here on the top. So we have the Ladakh in the green one because it used to be a state of Jammu and Kashmir, but in 2019, Ladakh was separated from Jammu and Kashmir. So now it's an union territory. So we have two union territories of India. That is, one is Jammu and Kashmir, and another one is Ladakh. So Ladakh is the northmost of India. So we have it is sandwiched between two borders. One is on one side we have Pakistan, and on the other side we have Tibet or China. So that is where the Ladakh is situated, and the population of Ladakh is around, and we have like two religion mostly, Muslim and Buddhist. So maybe we can say around 50-50%. And also we have two districts in Ladakh. So one is Leh district and one is Kargil district. So the Kargil district, the majority of population is Muslim, and in Leh district, the majority of population is Buddhist. So today we are not talking about politics and talking from the political aspect, but we are talking about Buddhism, and especially the Tibetan Buddhism, which is very much prevailing in Ladakh. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, when when we talk about Buddhism, first of all, one very important question is, we have to see what was there before Buddhism, before Buddhism was introduced, before Buddhism reached Ladakh. So it's a huge topic, actually, we can talk endlessly. But the thing is, today we have limited time. So I'm thinking about talking on 3 points. So the first one is, what was the religion before Buddhism in Ladakh? And the second point I want to talk is from where Buddhism was introduced to Ladakh. And the third point is the Buddhist belief and practices in Ladakh. So these are the 3 points that I would like to talk. And to start with, what was the religion before Buddhism was introduced in Ladakh? So we don't really have reliable sources, what was there. But the only sources that we have are the rock arts, actually, petroglyphs. So we have so many rock arts in Ladakh, all along the rivers, in the valleys, on the passes. You can find everywhere the prehistoric rock arts, so which are pre-Buddhist, prehistoric history. So and also there are like different stages of rock arts. For example, the earliest ones were the ibex, actually. So to know what religion was there, so only thing that comes to our mind is, what we learn is the Bon religion, which was an indigenous religion, animism, animism, and that they used to worship the nature. So that was there in Tibet, actually. So usually Ladakh comes under the Western Tibet. So the Bon religion was very much there, and they used to worship the nature, and it's a kind of like animism. So even when Acharya Shantarakshita went to Tibet to introduce Buddhism from Nalanda University, so those days it was reported that the local religion was called Bon religion, and Acharya Shantarakshita had some problems in introducing Buddhism in Tibet, because the local people or indigenous people were not ready to accept a foreign religion or new religion, because they already have their own Bon religion. So that is why the Shantarakshita then advised the king of Tibet to, invite Guru Padmasambhava, popularly known as Guru Rinpoche. So once he went to Tibet, and what he did was, actually, he first studied the local religion, the indigenous religion, and then he accepted all the good things from the local religion, indigenous religion, into Buddhism. So can you go back 2 slides, please? It's moving. The slide is moving, actually. Yes, it's just there. So he accepted all the good things from the indigenous religion into Buddhism, and then slowly, he started to introduce Buddhism to the local people in Tibet. So that is how Buddhism was introduced in Tibet, and that is why today what we call Tibetan Buddhism is kind of mixture of Bon religion and Buddhism, because we have so many influences still there in Buddhism from Bon. So actually, Buddhism did not replace Bon religion, but the Bon religion, it was uh, amalgamated into Buddhism, actually. So that is why the Buddhism today we find in Ladakh and Tibet is very much different from the Buddhism that we find in Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Burma. So that is the religion what we have today in Ladakh. But before introduction of Buddhism, as I said, we don't really have good sources to know what was there. But only thing that we know is bone religion was very much there, and the ibex, like sometimes they used to worship ibex. That is why. So we have so many rock arts in Ladakh with the figure of ibex. And later on, after like 10th century, then we have, when Buddhism was introduced, then again we have so many rock arts depicting stupas. So that was the latest part of this rock arts journey. So can you move to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Yes, this is what I'm talking about, the bone religion. So we, even for bone religion, we don't really find any sources in Ladakh whether it was there or not. But the thing is, we know that from the Tibetan perspective, we have so many influences still there in our Buddhist practices. And this is the swastika, which is anti-clockwise. That was the only sign of bone religion that we know, and it is still pretty well. So where there is bone religion, we have there the main symbol of that religion was and is the swastika, the anti-clockwise swastika. So the next slide, please. And yes, and now we are coming to the introduction of Buddhism to Ladakh. Buddhism, how it was introduced in Ladakh. So to know that, again, it's very difficult to find sources from where the Buddhism was introduced to Ladakh at the earliest. So there are some sources like the history of Kashmir called Raja Tarangini, where it is said that before King Ashoka, there was a king called Surender in Kashmir. And during his time, a temple was built in Kashmir at a place called Saurasa. And some scholars are in a view that Saurasa was in Ladakh, and there still we have a valley called Suru Valley in Ladakh. So some scholars says Saurasa was in Kashmir, and some says it was the Suru Valley of Ladakh. So we are not very sure because there is no any like reliable sources. So that was one thing. And secondly, as we all know that King Ashoka has sent missionaries to different directions to like to spread the Buddhism. And during that time, Arahant Majjantika went to Kashmir to introduce Buddhism. So, which is very clear from Ceylonese sources or Sri Lankan sources of Mahavansa, where it is very clearly stated that Majjantika went to Kashmir to introduce Buddhism. And we Ladakhis believe that around Majjantika, we call Dachomba Nyimakungpa. And Majjantika from Kashmir, he came to Ladakh. And Ladakh, the first place he reached after passing or after crossing the famous Zujila Pass. So he reached to this place. It's called, right now it's known as Lamayuru. So when he reached this place, it was said that the place was full of lake. Actually, it was a lake. So there was no mountains, no monastery, no houses. It was just a lake. And then Majjantika, once he reached here, he made some offerings to the Naga, the water spirits, and he threw some grains into the water. And then he went further, and we have some oral sources that he went up to the Nubra Valley of Ladakh, where I am from actually. And then there is still a small temple, a hermitage in Nubra Valley of Ladakh, where we have his footprints, which is still there. So people believe that that is the footprint of Ngima Gungpa. And then Then while coming back from Nubra Valley to through Leh to then he was going back to Kashmir, and then he saw that on his way back, the lake was dried, and lake is no more there. But the grains he has thrown into the water has sprouted into a shape of a swastika again. So that was an auspicious sign, and that is why this area, or this, even the monastery here you can see, is known as Lama Yuru Monastery. Earlier it was Yundung Monastery. Yundung means swastika. So that is how the place got name from the swastika. It is still called Lama Yuru Monastery. So this is one of the major monastery today in Ladakh. And also some scholars, like some historian like Franke, has mentioned that there was a bone temple here at this place. So today we can't see it, but he mentioned in his book that bone temple was there. So it must be one of the earliest Buddhist site, or also bone site in Ladakh. So this is another like another oral history. So it is also written in many books that Majantika came to Ladakh, and first he arrived Lama Yuru and all. The second, the next, please. Yes, and then there are many ruins and many, like ruin stupas and temples. But this is again, this is a ruin stupa or a temple. So this is again in Nubra Valley of Ladakh. So recently, the archaeologists has dated this site as 5th century. So if it is so, then this used to be the earliest Buddhist temple in Ladakh, actually. So now, just recently, the Archaeological Survey of India has, is listed as a protected monument. So I'm sure they will do some kind of excavation, and also from there we will surely come to know how old it is. Right now, says that it's around 5th century. If it is 5th century temple, then it has to be the earliest Buddhist temple in Ladakh. So this is still to be studied, still to be researched. And then there are several other, like ancient sites, archaeological sites, but the excavation never happened. But I'm very sure in, like in coming times, we will have more research, more excavation, and we will come to know more from where the Buddhism came, like was introduced to Ladakh. Next, please. And yes, these are the clear evidences of Buddhism, like the introduction of Buddhism into Ladakh. This is after like 7th, 8th century. So this rock arts we can find in many places of Ladakh. So the rock arts, the rock carvings of bodhisattvas. So here we have the rock carving of Manjushri, Bodhisattva Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom. And also we have here still there are some doubts, because some scholars and experts says Maitreya Buddha, the future Buddha, and some says Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. So anyway, we have so many these huge rock cuts, statues of bodhisattvas in Ladakh, especially in the lower part of Ladakh, in Kargil district. So this rock arts actually shows clearly that it's Kashmiri style, not Tibetan style. So the style of art is Kashmiri or Gandhara art. So that is why we always say that Buddhism came from India, not from Tibet at the beginning. So it was first introduced from Kashmir, and then later on from Tibet. So these are the clear sources that we have, like, so then still lots of research going on, especially by the art historians and all. So these are beautiful rock arts of bodhisattvas, especially the Kashmiri arts. So the next, please. And yes, then after that, so when Tibetan Buddhism was introduced in Ladakh, like that was around 10th, 11th century. So in 10th century, the first king of Ladakh was a kingdom actually, independent kingdom. So we used to have our uh, uh, own kingdom before it came into to India. So like the first king of Ladakh actually came from Tibet, and with his arrival, there are so many other monks, hermits, sorry, and meditators came to Ladakh from Tibet, and they stayed in all these type of caves. So we have so many caves in Ladakh. So those days we did not have monasteries or temples, but the monks and the hermits, they used to meditate, or they used to stay in the caves, the mountain caves. So that is why in Ladakh we have so many caves. So some of the caves are like still well maintained, and some of the caves are even painted inside, like. So there are so many like beautiful mountain caves in Ladakh still. So that was the time when Tibetan Buddhism started to, like arrive Ladakh. So the next, please.
I don't mean to interrupt, Doctor. But
Yes.
I just wanted to mention like that's really cool how like the image of the caves, like I feel like I've always pictured it like in a different way, but like to actually see the picture um of
Uh-huh.
how it was, and like it still currently is like that, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
The caves are
Yeah, I
still
think it's really
there. Yeah.
cool. Have you seen them
Mhm.
in person?
Yeah, yeah. Of course, it is everywhere in Ladakh, in many places, like. And my foundation, actually, Himalayan Cultural Heritage Foundation, has been working in the field of cultural preservation for
Hmm.
last 1 decades, and we have already, like did the conservation of paintings inside the caves.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, some of the caves are painted inside, and those are, like with the time factors and the climate change and all, many of these paintings are damaged. So with the experts, like we have done the painting conservations inside the caves. So yeah, we are very much, like trying to revive, or trying to, like preserve and conserve all those caves, especially the
Yeah.
painted caves. Like those are very precious heritage of Ladakh actually, and also the
Mhm.
Buddhist. So that is, I'm coming to that again. Like the slide here. Like we have Lama called Lochawa Rinchen Zampo. It was during his times actually many of these caves were painted, because he stayed mostly in the caves.
Mm.
So this is around like 11th 12th century, we can say. From 10th century to like 14th century, it was the time of Lama Losawa Rinchen Zampo and his disciples actually. So his tradition was very much prevailing, and that was the most prosperous period of Buddhism in Ladakh actually. And during those days, Lama Losawa Rinchen Zangpo, like he came from Tibet, and he was a very famous translator actually. So in Tibetan, if you want to study Tibetan Buddhism, we have like 108 volumes of Kangyur and 225 volumes of Stangyur. Like those are the
Mhm.
manuscript texts that we have. So the 108 volumes of Kangyur is the words of the Buddha actually. So he has translated all the texts from Sanskrit to Tibetan. So these are very much preserved in Ladakh today in the monasteries. So he was a famous, we call Lotsawa. Lotsawa means the translator, the famous translator. So during his times, it is said that 108 temples were built in Western Himalaya. That is in Ladakh, Spiti, Kinnaur, and Lahore. That is a part of Himachal Pradesh in the Himalayas, actually. So so even uh, there are so many caves, painted caves, which are attributed to Losawar Rinchen Zangpo and his disciples. Like. So
Mhm.
these painted caves are very much still preserved in Ladakh. So if you go to Ladakh, so you can see the caves and the paintings there. So that was the most, I think, most important period of Buddhism in Ladakh. So during those days, like so many texts were written, so many texts were translated from Sanskrit to Tibetan, and so many monasteries were built, and so many stupas were built. Actually, there are so many stupas still in Ladakh which attributed to Losava Rinchen Zampo. Like those his
Mhm.
stupas are very much different from the Tibetan stupas. So it was, and also, like all his temples and stupas were kind of like Kashmiri architect actually. And it is said that he brought all the artists from Kashmir, not from Tibet. So that is why, like the architectures are always Kashmiri architecture. For example, we have, as I said, he built 108 temples, but I'm not sure how many of them are still existing. But in Ladakh, we surely have three monasteries still very much preserved. So the most famous temple today in Ladakh is called Alchi, which is listed in even UNESCO's, like World Heritage. It's nominated actually. So this is the Alchi is the most famous, and which is like which is the most important treasure of Ladakh, I think. And that again, like attributed to Lotsawa Rinchen Zampo and his disciples. And then there are two more temples called Mangyu and Sumda. So these are still preserved in Ladakh. So whenever you visit Ladakh, you can see all these beautiful temples in the mountains. So the next, please. Yeah, and then like as I said, the first king of Ladakh came from Tibet, and after that, like the Tibetan Buddhism started to, started to introduce in Ladakh. And after that, the monks came from there and meditators came from there. And the king of Ladakh, like they started to offer lands to the lamas, like to build temples and monasteries. And after that, let's say after 14th century, like, and all these big Tibetan monasteries, like started to construct or build in Ladakh. So now today we have we have around 16 major monasteries in Ladakh, the huge big monasteries in Ladakh where many hundreds of monks are living. And then they have so many branches as village temples. So every village has a temple, and but they are all branches of these 16 huge monasteries. And usually, like one monk is deputed from these bigger monasteries to the temples, to look after the temples in the villages, the village temples. So uh, these are the most important Buddhist sites today. So as I said, 16 major monasteries. And also the tourist attraction actually. So now, like it's very difficult for the tourists or westerners or foreigners or even domestic Indian tourists to go to Tibet. So that is why if they want to see Tibet, they come to Ladakh, because Ladakh is sometimes even known as the little Tibet also. So that is how all these big monasteries came into being. For example, I just tell you one, like how the monastery, how the king and the lama, together built these big monasteries. For example, can you go to the next slide, please? Uh, Yes, this is how, like the Buddhism, what we have today, it's called a kind of like blended of Bonism and, like Buddhism. And today, it's also known as the Vajrayana Buddhism or the Tantric Buddhism also. So Tibetan Buddhism is very, like latest word that used by many scholars and writers, and also by the tourists, like this is Tibetan Buddhism, because as I said, like the practices, but the philosophy is very much the Buddhist philosophy. As I said, that we have 108 volumes of Buddha's words, Buddha's teaching. But then there are these different influences, because Ladakh was on a crossroad, so they have influences from different regions, from Central Asia, from Kashmir, from Tibet, so there are so many influences that mixed with Tibet, and that is how the practice looks very much different from other Buddhist countries. So yeah, the next, please. Oh yeah, the founding of monasteries, it was again very important, because as I said, the kings of Ladakh, they very much supported the monks coming from Tibet, to establish Buddhism in Ladakh, to build big monasteries, huge monasteries. For example, we have uh, four different sect of Tibetan Buddhism. For example, like Gelugpa, Nyingmapa, Kagyutpa, and Saskapa. These are the four different sects of Tibetan Buddhism. And we have monasteries belongs to all four sects in Ladakh. And there is one monastery which belongs to Saskapa called Matho Monastery. And just to tell you how it came into being, there was a very famous meditator monk in Tibet, used to live in a valley called Rongkhawa, and with him there used to live seven son brothers. Son mean a kind of spirit, or you can say local gods, so. Though he used to meditate in the valley, and and at the same time he used to make offerings to these local spirits or local gods. So one day he dreamed that his karmic followers are in the direction of Ladakh, and he thought that he should go to meet his karmic followers, and he started to travel towards Ladakh, and with him all these son brothers or these local spirits, they also came with him actually, because he was making offerings to them. So once he reached Ladakh, where we have Mato Monastery today, so he was again, there is a cave, so he was meditating in the cave, and while meditating in the cave, he saw a deer actually sleeping very peacefully on a huge rock. So he thought that this is an auspicious place, so I must build a monastery here. And then then the Ladakhi king was there, and the king was very happy to offer him the land, and granted the land, and he offered him lands from different villages actually. So then he started to build the monastery there. So that is how every monastery has a story behind the construction and all, establishment. So that is why we have all these huge monasteries in Ladakh today, and these monasteries are living heritage, and so many monks are living, and monastic schools are there in the monastery. And the monastery has different sections actually. So you have the assembly hall for the monks, where they all get together and do prayer, and they have the library for all these kangyur and tangyur, and also there is a different room for the protectors, called, we call it gonkang. And also then they have the courtyard where they perform the marks dances in the annual festivals. So these are well maintained monasteries, and also the head of the monasteries are usually the reincarnated lamas, the rinpoches, so they have separate, residence inside the monastery. So this is a well established institution, we can say, it's a more like an institution. So yes, can you go to the next slide, please? Uh, yes, and again, as I said, the monasteries are the treasure house of all these religious objects. So when you go inside the monasteries, you can see beautiful wall paintings, mural paintings, and thangka painting, the scroll paintings, and also so many religious objects, and many of them, brought from Tibet. So before 1959, when China actually invaded Tibet, before that all the monks from Ladakh, they used to go to Tibet for higher studies. So while coming back, they used to bring some religious objects like tanka, scroll painting, or statues, or any kind of like religious objects that used during the prayer and rituals. So that is why all these Ladakhi monasteries are full of, like all these treasures actually, mostly coming from Tibet and also from Nepal. So that is why, so today we have so many tourists coming from, like from Europe, America, from domestic tourists. We have so many domestic tourists coming to see all these monasteries and the religious object inside the monasteries. They are full of religious objects actually, and also the paintings. Next slide, please. And yes, as I said, that every that monasteries, especially the 16 major monasteries in Ladakh, they have a huge courtyard inside the monastery for the marks dances. Like so, marks dances usually we call it cham. So it's performed by the monks, and like the chams are even it's not just a dance, it's not just a kind of like festival or dance, but these are all ritual performances. So these are even before the mark dances, monks do a lengthy period of meditation and prayers, like at least for a week or something. So several days they do prayers, they do meditations for the particular protector, like. And even while they wear marks and they do the dances, they visualize that he himself is the deity or the god, like. So that is why there are so many pilgrimage from every part of Ladakh. They go to the monastery where there is the marks dances. So for local people, it is not a festival. It's a kind of like ritual performances where they can see the deities and gods, like dancing. So, but for outsiders, it's a beautiful festival where they can go and take photograph and all, like. So, yeah. So the next one, please. Yes, and this is another structure that we can find everywhere in Ladakh. So this is a good example of, like the mixture of Bon and Buddhist. So these are called Lato. Lato is the residence of the protectors actually. So we have mostly two different protectors. One is village protectors. So there is a protector for the whole village, and then there is a family protector. Like family protector means that the protector which protects your family. So there sometimes there are like 6 to 7 families together. They have one protector. So that is what we call faspun. Like is a faspun system where like 7 or 8 families have one protector, and they work together for every, when there is a kind of like ceremony in their houses, or whether there is a death or there is a marriage or whatever. All these group of families, they work together because they are under one protector. So these protectors, they build this kind of like structures we call lato. So there are so many rituals, like related to lato. So yeah, so we can find most villages of Ladakh. So even during the New Year, the we call Losar, like during Losar or New Year. So the people, they change all the contents and junipers on the top, like. So there are so many rituals are done related to the protector and the residents of protector called the uh, Sla and Sato. That is what we call in local language. So the next slide, please. Yeah, then the most important integral part of Buddhist practices are the stupas, like. So stupas we have in other countries also. We have in Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, where we have Buddhist stupas. But Ladakh, the land of Ladakh is all dotted with stupas. There are so many stupas in Ladakh. I don't think anywhere in the world, like that this much of stupas. So you can find everywhere in Ladakh. And people, like people worship and people do circumambulation of the stupas. So mostly we have like 8 different types of stupas. You can see here, like all 8 are here, which symbolizes different events in the life of the Buddha. So right from his birth to parinirvana, we have like 8 major events in the life of the Buddha. So those are the 8 different types of stupas, which are even sometimes we says that stupas of Tibetan Buddhism. But before that, this part of the stupas are very much different. This, like this don't come under the 8 different types. So these were mostly built by the Lama Losawar in Chanzangpo in from around 10 to 12th century. So these are almost like 1,000 years, 800, 900, and even 1,000 years old. So many of these stupas are now, like in kind of ruins because of the time factors, because of the rain, winds, and also the negligence from the local people, like, and that is why one of the main aim of my foundation is to restore all these stupas, like the old stupas, because whenever His Holiness Dalai Lama come to Ladakh, he always tell people, like you have so many heritage sites, you have so many Buddhist monuments in Ladakh, old monuments in Ladakh. You don't need to build new monuments in Ladakh, but you should, like you should restore and preserve the old ones. They are more, like important. So that is why we, through our foundation, we have been restoring stupas in Ladakh. So far we have restored around 40 stupas in different parts of Ladakh. So that is one of the aim of my foundation. So the next slide, please. And these are the 8 different types of stupas, like especially in Tibetan Buddhism. So the first one is symbolizing the birth of the Buddha, which is called lotus blossom stupa. So this usually the stupas are, you may see most of them are similar, but the middle part is always different. All the stupas, like, so here the first one you have lotuses here. It's a heap of lotus actually. So which symbolizes the birth of the Buddha, and the second one symbolizes enlightenment of the Buddha, and the third one symbolizes we call stupa of many doors or Tashigomang, which symbolizes the first preaching of the Buddha at Varanasi. So he, after becoming enlightenment, as we all know, that he gave his first sermon, his first preaching in the deer park of Varanasi. So this stupa symbolizes the first preaching of the Buddha, and the fourth one is stupa of great miracles. So he has shown many miracles, like for his opposition or other faiths. So that is to symbolize his miracles. So we have the fourth stupa, and the fifth one is called Labab Chorten, we call it. So uh, the Buddha, he went to heaven, to Shita heaven to preach his mother. So after that, he came back to the world again, and to commemorate that, we have this stupa, which is called Labab stupa, and it has a stair in the middle. So that symbolizes that Buddha is coming back from heaven, So then again, we have the stupa of reconciliation. So once all among his followers or his disciples, there were some kind of like disagreements, and then Buddha again, like united them. And to commemorate that, we have this stupa called Stupa of Reconciliation, or Endum Choten. And then we have Namgyal Choten, when the Buddha became sick, and one of his disciples, like requested him not to pass away. And then he extended his passing away for 3 months. And to commemorate that, we have this Namgyal Stupa, which is also known as the Stupa of Victory, like. So then lastly, the stupa of parinirvana. So this is the last one. So these are at stupas we have everywhere in Ladakh. You can find every villages, every valleys, everywhere, like people build this. Even now, even people build so many new stupas there, So those are mostly from all these 8 different stupas. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah. And also we can find these three colors, like stupas with three colors like blue, white, and yellow, which are very common in Ladakh today. So it all three comes under the eight different types of stupas, but their color in different. So this symbolizes that the yellow symbolizes Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom, and the white symbolizes Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and then the blue one symbolizes Vajrapani, Bodhisattva Vajrapani, or the power. So we have the wisdom, compassion, and power. So these are what symbolized by these three stupas, which you can find everywhere in Ladakh. Next, please. And then again, one very important Buddhist monument in Ladakh is the money walls. We call it money walls because mostly the mantra of Avalokiteshvara that I just mentioned, it's called Om Mani Padme Hum, is the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, which is recited by all the people of Tibet, Ladakh, and all the people, Buddhists living in the Himalayan regions like Bhutan, Nepal, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh. All these Buddhists, like they recite all these mantras, especially the mantra of Avalokiteshvara, called Om Mani Padme Hum. So then there are different mantras of Tara called Om Tare, Tutare, Ture, Soha, and also the mantra of Guru Padma Sambhava, Om Vajrapani Hum, Padme Hum. Like that, there are so many mantras are carved on stones, and then they put it on the walls. There are like long walls you can find in Ladakh. So so by like worshipping, reciting, and doing circumambulations of these walls, people believe that they accrue merits for like not only for themselves but for all sentient beings. Like so this is how they do the daily religious practices. So doing circumambulation around the money wall, around the stupas, reciting the mantras. Like yeah, the next. And then again, one very important, like religious practice or religious sites or monuments, we can say is the sacred, sorry, sacred landscape. So there are so many sacred landscapes in Ladakh. So it can be like rock formations, it can be water bodies, lake, spring, or it can be like tree or grove. So again, I think we have a strong influences from that indigenous born religion here. I think so because we consider there are so many lakes in Ladakh. We consider them as a sacred, and that is why people go on pilgrimage to all these lakes. And sometimes like they have a strong faith and strong belief. Like sometimes they says they go on pilgrimage on special occasions, on auspicious days, especially like the full moon and half moon day. Like the 15th and 30th of the month are considered very auspicious, and during those days people go on pilgrimage to all these sacred sites. And sometimes they says like in the lake, even they can see the monasteries in Tibet from the lake. So the reflection from the lake, they can see monasteries in Tibet. So I have been to many of these lakes, but I have never seen anything in the lake. Only thing I can see is the reflection of the mountains in the lake. Like, but the people with faith, strong faith, like they can see monasteries and stupas which are in Tibet. They can see it in the lake of Ladakh. So that is how it goes, because I think the faith and the belief is very important also sometimes. And then there are so many rock formations and beliefs, especially like, so in the first picture you can see there are so many people, like, and there is a small hole in the mountain here, and they believe that going through that hole consider very meritorious, and like, and after that they will not go to hell once they go through this hole here. So these are their local beliefs. So like that, there are so many sacred landscapes in Ladakh, and we have like so many sacred trees, sacred groves. So people never harm, never cut the trees. And I think that those are all accepted from born religion to Buddhism. And as I said, when Guru Padmasambhava, when he introduced Buddhism in Tibet, he has accepted all the good things from Bon religion. These are a really good thing. Even if we think from the point of like conserving the environment. So these are so once it's cigarette, so people keep it very clean. They don't harm them. Like so. Yeah, the next slide, please. And then the prayer flags you can find everywhere in Ladakh. Then again, the origin of prayer flags goes back to the Bon religion. They used to have the flags, but then later on, the Buddhist they started to print mantras on the flag. Like so earlier when the Bon also used to have the flags, but they did not have the mantras on the flags. But now every flags you can see the mantras, and then there are like five colors which symbolizes the five elements. Like so for example, like the water, earth, wind, space, and fire. These are the five elements, and the we always consider to have a good health, we all this has to be like harmonized. So to harmonize the elements we put prayer flags, and people sometimes people think that we put prayer flags to pray the triple gem or to the Buddha or to the gods. Like it's not like that. Through these prayer flags we want to send all these prayers to every sentient being. So once the wind touches the prayer, the mantras, the flags, and it like blows to every direction. So it's a kind of like just the vibration that goes to every direction. So that is how we want to send our prayers to all the sentient beings. So that is why we put lots of prayer. We put prayer flags, and like yeah, then these are very important part of religious practices in Ladakh, and especially I think the prayer flags are important, and then the stupas are really very important. I think that's why we do a lot of like activities related to the stupas, because there is a sutta called Stainless Beam Sutta, which states that all negative karma obscurations are purified by even by a dreaming of a stupa, like, or a seeing a stupa. You can, like, uh, clear your all bad karmas or negative karmas, and even hearing of a bell of a stupa, like, and it is said that the animals, even if they are touched by the shadow of the stupas, so they can, like, accrue merits. So there are so many beliefs like that. And the next, please.
Wow, yeah, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm coming towards the end of my presentation, and then the last one is, as I mentioned earlier, that we have so many texts in the monasteries. So 108 volumes of Kangyur, which is the word of the Buddha, like the suttas, and then we have 225 volumes, which are mostly the commentaries written by the scholars, like, and people strongly believe, especially the Buddhists strongly believe, that just reading of these texts are meritorious. Like that is why people invite monks to their houses just to read the manuscripts. Whether they understand it or not, but they will just do the reading of the manuscript, which is they believe that which is meritorious. So so that is very much there. And like even with the agriculture, so these are all kind of like relation or related, like, so usually in the summers they invite monks and they carry all the religious books and they go around the agricultural fields, so they think that it will bless the fields and they will have a good harvest, like. So there are so many beliefs like that, and reading of all these texts are very important. But nowadays, like, especially even people are trying to understand those. Earlier it was just a faith, like reading is important, understanding is like they never care about understanding what is written in the text. But nowadays, whenever His Holiness Dalai Lama comes to Ladakh, he always advise people to try to understand and then practice, like, so earlier practice was there, belief was there, but faith was there, but understanding was not there. But now people, like, even try to understand all, like what is written in the text and all. Yeah, that is the changes that recently we are having among Buddhist communities and society. Next slide, please. And then again, this must be my last slide. So here I would like to tell a little bit about the relationship between Buddhist monks and lay people, which is, I think, very important to keeping alive Buddhist practices. So this is very important because, like, it's almost similar to all the other Buddhist countries, even in Sri Lanka and Thailand and Burma and all, like, so especially the lay people like us, we need monks right from birth to death, So even when a child is born, like, first of all, what we do is we get name for the child from the high lamas, reincarnated lamas. So we don't give name to our children. So we get even the name from the monks, like from the reincarnated lamas or rinpoches. And then there are so many. So we consider Buddhist monks as our guide or our friend or our, like, spiritual friend or even our teacher, like, so whenever we have any problem, we go to the monastery, we consult the monks and all. So on the other hand, like, the lay people always help the monastery. So the monasteries, as I said, the kings of Ladakh, they donated so many lands to the monasteries, but there is no people to cultivate them. So the lay people do the cultivations, and then they offer part of their, harvest to the monasteries. So then they give also donations. So if there is a restoration or construction in the monastery, the lay people go and help the monks. And on the other side, monks do all the, like, spiritual guidance. And, whenever we need their guidance, the monks are always there, So that's why the relationship between monks and lay people are, I think, very close and also very important in keeping alive the Buddhist cultural heritage of Ladakh. So that must be yeah, maybe one more slide, please. And this is the latest development, actually, because in Ladakh we never had Theravada monks, but recently in 1980s they have started. I think now we have the Mahabodhi meditation center in Ladakh. So it was started by a Theravada monk from Ladakh called Venerable Sangasena. So he has started this center. Now it has become a very important center of like, you have all the meditation facilities. You can go there and do meditations, and also you have the health facilities there for the people, and they have a big huge school inside the campus, and also they have old age home. So it has become a huge Buddhist center in Ladakh right now. So also now we have many Theravada monks also there. So many Ladakhi children are becoming monks. Yeah, so that is my end of my presentations.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sonam. That last picture is it's so beautiful. The little kids, well, like the little monks.
Yes,
Actually, it's very
yeah,
beautiful.
that is at the Mahabodhi Meditation Center, actually, and the
And
monks who has founded the center.
oh wow, yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you again for your great
Most
presentation.
welcome. Yeah.
I'm sure all our
Most
Dhamma
welcome.
friends around the world were benefited today. So, Dhamma friends, we will take up your questions now, and we encourage you to post your questions through the Dhamma USA YouTube channel in the chat box. Okay, we can wait a minute or so for any questions.
Maybe they all want to come to Ladakh, so that is why no question here.
Yeah. already enlightened by your lecture, Doctor. Okay. Well, we have a question. How many Rinpoches are there?
Okay. There are many Rinpoches in Ladakh, but the most important, or most we can say the supreme religious leader we consider is His Holiness Dalai Lama. Actually, he lives in Dharamshala in India, Himachal Pradesh, but very often he visits Ladakh. So he's the supreme religious head, and also we have His Holiness the Drukchen Rinpoche. Mostly he lives in Nepal. So Dalai Lama is the head of Gelugpa tradition, Gelugpa sect, and Drukchen Rinpoche, His Holiness Drukchen Rinpoche, is the head of Kagyutpa sect. So the different tradition, different sect. But then there are so many Rinpoches, so many, and especially so many young Rinpoches are there in Ladakh today. So I don't know exactly how many of them are there, but there are many.
Okay, thank you. We have another question from Albert Brown. Does Tara and her different manifestations precede Bon?
Tara, I don't think so. Because as I said, like Bon religion was an animistic religion. So it always used to worship the mountains, trees, water bodies, and the nature. So, Tara is a like Buddhist deity actually. So I don't think it comes from Bonism.
Oh, Bon. Okay, thank you. We have another question. There's another Bon tribe in Myanmar, possibly in some other countries as well in the Southeast Asia. Do you think there is any connection?
Uh, Could be, because like Bon religion, as I said, it was the most ancient religion, and it has been prevailing in most of the Central Asian countries. Like Mongolia, even towards all this Tibet, and especially their center was in Western Tibet called Ngari Korsum. So that was their main center. It was known as Zhangzhung. So Zhangzhung was the main center of Bon. So from there, it spreaded in many Asian countries. So maybe it's a subject to study and research. It could be from the same Bon tradition.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We have another question. What is the difference between a lama and a monk? It's a good question.
It is the same. Actually, nowadays, every monk we call lama. Like the Tibet, especially the Tibetan monks, we call lama. But literally, lama means teacher, guru. Like your guru is called lama, your teacher is called lama. But nowadays, every Tibetan monks we call lama. So otherwise, lama literally means the teacher or the guru. So as I said, monks are always considered as your guru or your teacher. So that is why we call lama. But nowadays, all the monks or monks of Tibet, Tibetan monks or Ladakhi monks. So whenever you see a people in robe, you say lama. Like otherwise, literally it means the teacher.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought, like for
Yeah.
Dalai Lama, I thought it was just his
Hmm.
Ubuntu's name. Um,
Yeah.
okay, we have a comment from Albert Brown. I had a vision of Tara and she instructed me to build a stupa here in America. So I'm inspired by by your presentation. Wow,
Wow. Yeah.
that's really cool. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Surely you can build a stupa. If you need help, you can just tell me.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Sonam, when you mentioned how there's like stupas everywhere in Ladakh, that actually reminded me when Bhante Sumita and I and some other venerables went to Italy for teaching meditation retreats. We noticed that like everywhere we went, there was
Hmm.
a like Mary. I'm sorry, I don't really know too much about, but like like there's like
Right.
churches everywhere. But
Yeah.
there's like always the deva and like yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
don't know too much about Nepal,
And
so I
yeah,
forgot.
right. And also,
Um,
like stupa building is not something like constructing a house or building a house. Like stupa is a religious structure, so it has to be exact in proportion, measurement. Like so we have a
yeah,
text on stupa building. So the mason or the architect who built the stupa, he has to do it according to the text. Like we have a special text to build stupa. So when I started my foundation, like we always knew that Ladakh, the land of Ladakh, is dotted with stupas. There are so many stupas, and many of them are in ruin. So we need to restore them. But the thing is, then I came to know that there was only one stupa expert in Ladakh. Like at that time. So and also he was in his 90s, like so I was very much worried, like if he passed away, then how we can restore the stupas, who will build stupas in Ladakh after that, because there is only one expert. So that is why I started my foundation. And the first thing that I did was, like we trained 16 masons from different villages of Ladakh. Like we brought the stupa expert there, and he imparted all his knowledge and experiences, and like to all these 16 masons. So now we have many stupa experts in Ladakh. So they are restoring the stupas, they are building new stupas, and yeah. So that is why one of the main aim and objective of my foundations, like especially restoring all monuments in Ladakh. Yeah.
okay. We have another comment from Albert Brown. I would
Of
love
course,
your
my email ID is given at the end of the presentation. So otherwise, you can note it down also. It's like Sonam, 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 Leh, digit 2 @gmail.com. You are most
was
welcome
it
to write to me. Yes.
LAH you said? Or,
Yeah, LEH. Yeah, LEH.
okay, okay. I was just gonna put it. Okay, so
Right.
Albert, the email is in the comment section. Actually, going back to the stupa, when you
Mhm.
mentioned, Dr. Sonam, how having stupas around you, like looking at a stupa or hearing the bells of a stupa,
Yes.
brings the negative karma down. I was like thinking, oh, I would like to get some stupas in my
Hmm.
in my room and stuff. But like yeah, I mean we have one stupa, but yeah, it was funny.
Right. Right. Yeah. And especially doing the circumambulation of the stupa, like it's a kind of like meditation while you are doing the circumambulations, like you meditate and you think of all good things, and at the same time you recite the mantras, like that is how the Buddhist people in Ladakh and all these Himalayan regions they do actually.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I also have a question. So I know, as you mentioned, the Tibetan flags are usually all across the areas in Ladakh, right? Ladakh. Um,
Yeah, right.
and they eventually started putting prints, like mantras, on the flags. So I actually
Mhm.
met someone here at Empty Cloud Monastery. That's a little bit, that's pretty close to me, to my home. She was practicing in the Tibetan tradition, and she had mentioned to me how, um, like the flags with the Tibetan mantras written on them represents like the prayers going into the wind. So like good energy like
Mhm.
flowing across the wind as like
Right.
the wind blows. So I just wanted to like get more input on that from you if you know anything about that.
Uh, Yes, actually, especially, like when we talk about our health, so it can be like our body or our mind, like sometimes you have physical problems, sometimes you have mental problems, like during those days, especially people put prayer flags, like, so it's a kind of like energy. We always believe that three elements are very important. That is, we call shock, which means the breath, like to breath, and also we call loose, which means body, and we call wang, which means the moral energy. These three elements are very important for a healthy mind and healthy body, like the breath, the body, and the moral energy. So to harmonize them or unite them together, so we always put prayer flags, like, and also, as I said, the five elements, which are very important, because we have to have balance of all these five elements to keep our mind and body healthy, like, so it's a kind of like psychological strength also, like sometimes when you are psychologically down, so you go and put a prayer flag, and after that, like you become stronger, like mentally and physically. So these are all kind of like beliefs, like, so that is why we put prayer flags. And also sometimes we think that, like even if we can put higher and higher, like it's more beneficial actually. That is why we go to the mountains, we go to the mountain passes, like, and then we put prayer flags, so from there the prayers can be spread towards more directions, like, yeah, those are the beliefs actually.
Wow, that's very interesting. I definitely did not know that. That makes sense though, like going up to the mountains and
Yes, yeah.
having the flags there. Okay.
Mm.
Um. Oh, so we have a question. The monastery that we saw in the presentation is just like the one in Tibetan capital. Is there any connection? And is that the HQ or main temple of Dalai Lama?
No, actually, I think it's called Tikse Monastery. So, which from distance, sometimes it looks like Potala. That is the main residence of Dalai Lama in Tibet. But I don't think there is any connection with these two monasteries, one in Ladakh and one in Tibet. But from distance, yeah, sometimes you see it's kind of like similar, like, and also this is not the headquarter of the Dalai Lama, but one in Tibet, the Potala is of course yes, and in Ladakh one is called Tikse Monastery. It is just another monastery that belongs to Gelugpa sect of Tibetan Buddhism, and which Dalai Lama also belongs, like he's the head of that particular sect called Gelugpa. And yeah, and I don't think there is any kind of like what do you say, similarity. But from distance, sometimes it looks similar. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And then looks like this is our last question. Can you explain a little bit about the Tibetan prostration practice? It
Prostration.
is such an honorable and respectful devotional ritual by the Tibetan Buddhists.
Yeah. Yes, this is another thing, like doing prostration is another thing, because it's like doing the circumambulation, reciting the mantra. And while doing prostration, also you recite mantra. So it is not just a prostration, it's a meditation also, like, so when you are doing we can say it's a type of yoga also, like, so you work with both your body and mind. So you meditate, you recite mantra, and you do prostrations. So that is how you accrue merits by doing that, like, so this is just one another practice of Tibetan Buddhism especially. So there are two types of prostration, one you do with your on your knees actually, and one is full stretch prostration. So these are the two different types of prostration. Otherwise, it's again a Buddhist practice, a meditation, and like, and also the most important thing is by doing prostration, by doing circumambulation, by reciting mantra, you are not doing it for yourself, but you are like you are doing all this for all sentient being. There is the compassion that we want to spread, like, and there is the word that compassion His Holiness Dalai Lama always talk about. So whenever we are doing prostration, we are doing circumambulation, or we are doing any kind of meritorious action, so we always think about all sentient beings.
Okay. Yes, of course. We love to share merits to everyone.
Yes, yes,
It's
yes.
definitely a Buddhist practice. So that is all for the questions. So here is the website of Dr. Sonam's foundation. It is also in the chat
Right.
box. We do have, Albert Brown has said a deep bow. Thank you. Um,
Thank you very much.
also mentioned that she's impressed with the Himalayan Buddhist culture and feels it has much to teach to the world about peace.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So, with that, we conclude today's guest lecture, and we look forward to meeting you with more interesting topics like this in the upcoming weeks. Please contact us if you have any interesting and useful topics, and we would also like to invite you, if you are interested, in joining us in this weekly guest lecture series. I would like to
Yes,
sincerely.
and also, yeah, yeah, and you're always welcome to contact me, and especially if you are coming to Ladakh, maybe you can, like, just contact me and we meet in Ladakh. So also, if I have a chance next time to speak, then maybe I will make sure that I will have camera so that people can see me also. Today we have some problem with this technology.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that
Mhm.
invitation. Um, for all. Then we have another question from Rahul Pawar. Actually, how does the earlier lakes disappear from Ladakh?
I'm not very sure which lake he's talking about, but it's more to do with I think, the climate and environment, because yeah, there are some lakes dying out in Ladakh. Like, there is a concern for every one of us living in the Himalayas, because of the climate change. Like, as I said at the beginning, so today we are having snow here, and we are very happy because we need glaciers, we need snow to, like, so that we can have all these lakes and streams, from where we fetch water for our agriculture and day-to-day life. So that is why, but in last few years, the climate change is very much there, and we had very little snow. So because of that, many of these glaciers are now resisting, reducing, and disappearing. Like, there is a big concern for all the people living in the Himalayas. So, and once you don't have the glaciers, then sometimes the lakes also dried out. So that is the main reason, actually. But here, if he's talking about any particular lake, I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think Rahul specified a specific lake. If you can, Rahul, you can mention it in the chat box. But so Jayanta Fernando also says thanks.
Thank
Albert
you.
Brown, may your work restoring stupas be blessed and continue with all the funding and help you need. Sadhu.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then, yep, we will definitely invite you again for another session, Dr. Sonam.
Sure. Looking forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to sincerely thank our guest for kindly accepting our invitation for this guest lecture series. May you always be well, happy, and healthy. Let's also keep our palms together close to our heart and pray by the power of all the Dana, Sila, Bhavana activities that we have all performed during our lifetime and during our whole course of samsara. Become one united power and may it be shared with all the celestial beings. May all the wonderful celestial beings, including respectful Brahmas and Devas, and all sentient beings receive this merit and share this merit and be well, happy, health, and healthy wherever they are. May all your departed ones also receive this merit and be well, happy, and healthy and safe wherever they are. May all of us be able to live life peacefully, comfortably, and with good health. May all of us and all
Thank you.
sentient beings be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, the absolute peace and happiness at the end of our samsara. Thinking thus, please keep your palms close to your heart and say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. All right. See you again next
Okay,
week.
thank you very much. Yeah, see.
Okay. Good night, everyone.